are we available to have a connected, caring conversation right now? And the way to know that is to ask this one question. Are either of us willing and able to listen? If no one's able or willing to listen, do not say another word, because there is no point. Because the point of speaking is to be heard. And if no one is online to listen, no one's going to get heard. And that in itself will totally change the game.
That's the voice of Ali Miller. Today on Living Big Mindfully, we are taking a deep dive into communication. Such an important subject, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you today. Ali is a longtime family therapist and a certified coach. She helps people all over the world communicate in a more peaceful, compassionate, heart-centered way. We can all do with a little bit more of that, right? And here's a spoiler alert. Ali gives us so many tips and strategies, things that we can actually begin to use today. You might want to get a pen and paper. Okay, so Ali starts out with a little bit about herself and how she got to doing what she does today. And then we take a deep dive into all things communication, what it is, why and how it's so undervalued, and honestly, frankly, how most of us suck at it, including me, taking full responsibility here. We talk about those shame, blame, and judgment cycles that we can all get stuck in, and how we can begin to shift the spotlight from the other to ourselves to really begin to uncover our own feelings and needs. This was a game changer for me today. Ali shares the core principles from the nonviolent communication technique and gives us more powerful tips and strategies. And no surprise, Ali wraps things up with some heartfelt sage advice. You know, Ali is a gifted, caring, compassionate communicator. And even with my background and training as a therapist, I honestly learned so much from her today and had some of my own aha moments. If you do one thing, please go onto Ali's website and download her list of needs and feelings. You can be sure I'll be grabbing my copy. This is a game changer, so the links will be in the show notes. I learned so much from Ali today. This might be one of those episodes you bookmark, listen to again, and share with a friend. I'm sure we all have people that could use some help with communication, right? Okay, so lastly, just a couple of community announcements. Remember to download your free hiking guide or the newest 12 ways to calm your nervous system, simple and effective ways to reduce stress and anxiety. And if you want more support, inspiration, and guidance as you create a lovely, powerful, intentional lifestyle, start with one of my best-selling books, Never Too Late or You Are Limitless. Everything can be found at katechampionauthor.com. And remember, we also have a Facebook community. Again, no charge. Jump on to the Back of the Pack Facebook group. There's always something fun going on there, and we'd love to see you there. Again, lots of resources, all designed to support and inspire you to live longer, stronger, healthier lives. So no excuses, right? Okay. As always, I thank you. I support you. I am here for you. And here's the show. Enjoy. Welcome, Ali Miller, to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you, Kate. I'm so excited to be here. I feel really psyched to have this conversation with you and to see where it goes, and really just so grateful for this opportunity. So thanks for having me on your podcast.
Of course. And we've had so much fun already on the pre-record. We've been laughing, we've been crying. There is a connection. So I think we're going to have a great conversation for you guys today. So Ali, tell us a little bit about your journey, like what you're doing, how you got to doing what you're doing, and how you were led to really be this all about communication. I want to hear about you and your story.
Sure. Yeah. So, where does it start? I'll start with what I was most interested in at that pinnacle important time in one's life if you go to college, when you're graduating from college and you're like entering the world and you're like, what do I want to do? And there was all this pressure. And I knew that what I wanted to do wasn't traditional. I wasn't interested in like going the corporate route or even in any like particular job. All I knew was I see an alienated culture around me. I was a sociology major. And I want to help us be less alienated. I want to help us be more empowered, more authentic, and more connected. Like, I just knew that. And I was like, I don't know how. And then I found this really cool alternative grad school where it's called the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco, California. I was on the East Coast of the United States at the time. And they just had this like alternative kind of Eastern influenced counseling psychology program where they were integrating like Buddhism and Hinduism and different Eastern spiritual traditions with psychology, where it was really a lot about like human potential and growth and healing. And it wasn't so much about like experimental psychology or diagnosing or testing or assessing. And anyway, I was like, that's where I want to go. And I like found a way to get there. And that's where I went to grad school. And I just knew like, I want to help people be more authentic and more connected. That was just all I knew. I wasn't even like, I want to be a therapist. I just had that kind of mission. Anyway, I found Carl Rogers there. He was a founder of humanistic psychology. I was introduced to his work right away and really resonated with that approach. And then after grad school, so this is like 6 years after I started grad school, I read this book called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life, written by Marshall Rosenberg, who it turns out was a student of Carl Rogers. And the book really resonated for me, so much so that I was like, how do I learn more? And so I took some classes and I took an intro class. And in that class, we did this exercise where you get in a small group and you talk about something that you're struggling with. Doesn't have to be like a major struggle, but just something. And then the people in the group, they don't give you advice. They don't share how they relate. They don't focus at all really on themselves or what they think. All they do is give you a card with a feeling word on it. They have these decks of cards with feelings words on it, and then deck of cards with needs words on it. And so they listen to your story and then they just make guesses about your feelings and needs. Mm-hmm. This was a profound moment for me. I had already been a therapist. I had already been in therapy. And in this group, in this experience, I honestly was like, I have never been heard this deeply before. All they were doing, Kate, was handing me a card that had a feeling word on it. It was so simple. And yet it was like so healing. I was like, wow, these people are really listening to me. They're like hearing my heart. That's how it felt. And so then I was just hooked. And then there's all these aspects about nonviolent communication that really resonated for me. But that moment was when I was like, oh, this I want to pursue. And then I just took classes and groups and then started assisting my teachers and then started teaching it. And you know how it goes when you like find something that really resonates.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're talking, again, I know listeners can't see you, but there's just this lovely, like warm, kind of heartfelt kind of glow about you as you connect with that moment in that group, right? Really, truly feeling heard and seen for the first time. It just must have been wonderful for you. Very powerful.
Yes, it was. Thank you for reflecting that back. It was a really profound moment in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you're helping others, right? You're helping other people, I'm guessing, do you work with families, individuals, couples across the board?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mostly individuals and couples, sometimes families. Like I've worked with, I used to work more with families, but now I work mostly with individuals and couples. And then like I've had some like adult siblings come to me who are like in conflict with each other and help them hear each other and work out their conflicts. That's been really
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I'd love to start with a little bit. I mean, this might sound like a simple question, but I really want to talk to listeners and have them, listen in and join us and learn about what is communication, because we as humans, 7 billion people on the planet, we all use some form of communication. And I think it's just so underrated and so missed and so misunderstood. I would love to, let's talk about what is communication. What is that?
Yes, it's such a good question. I love what you're saying about it being misunderstood. And even in the therapy world, I don't know if you found this, but it's almost like minimized or like undervalued. Like, oh, like it's not like there's so much more going on than communication. And I'm always like, sure. But also, like, when people can communicate with each other, there's a lot that can be resolved that can't be resolved if we don't know how to communicate with each other.
Yeah. So, and I want to jump in and say another thing, which maybe we could take a little detour on. So as we're talking about external communication, but there's also internal communication, the way we communicate with ourselves inside, right?
Yes. And the internal communication is such an essential piece that often doesn't get talked about. So I love that you're bringing that up. Do you wanna go there?
Let's start with the high level view of communication. Just communication. What is it? And why do we suck at it? Why is it so hard? Right. Even for therapists, trust me. Why is it so hard?
I love that. What is it and why do we suck at it? Even therapists. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it? So it has the word union in it, or it like has, I don't know, I guess the word union isn't in it, but it's like commune, right? Communication. So it's about communing. It's like we are separate, right? Maybe essentially we're not separate, but we are in separate bodies. We have separate personalities. We have separate brains, separate thoughts, right? But yet we like to be together as humans, right? We're social beings. And so communication is how we can bridge that gap from separate to together, right? It's like, I'm my own separate person. You're your own separate person. What's going to help us get along and live on this shared planet is communication. It's like, we need that in order to get along. And there's a lot of folks not getting along on our planet, right? And that's, I think, a lot to do with the fact that we're not prioritizing communication skills as a world, as a culture, that we're not prioritizing teaching that a lot of people had never took a class in communication or conflict resolution, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So is communication talking? Is it talking and listening? Is it verbals? Is it non-verbals? I mean, it's so much more complex than we give it credit for.
Right. We often think, and even I Googled it, like if you Google communicate or communication, it's about sharing ideas is what Google says. But that definition totally leaves out the listening part, right? One of the myths about communication is that it's just about talking, but like 50% or more of communication is about listening. And like, who takes classes in listening? Like 1% of the population, like the people who go to therapy school or like counseling school, or maybe some doctors take one class in listening. It's like people aren't going around being like, I want to be a better listener. Like that's very rare. And yet people are like, I want to communicate better. But it's like that, right? It's like communication is at least 50% listening. But I think of it as like listening to myself, listening to the other person, and expressing what's important to me to express. It's like 3 parts.
So that touches on the internal communication a little bit, right? The way we're talking to ourselves in our heads, right? In our internal chatter. That's I think that's another vital piece too. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell listeners a little bit about that, the internal part here.
Yeah. There's a skill that we practice in nonviolent communication, which is called self-empathy. And what that is turning our attention inward to pay attention to like what's going on inside me. What am I experiencing physically? What emotions am I experiencing? And then linking those emotions to our needs. So there's a key principle in nonviolent communication that our feelings are messengers alerting us to our needs. So anytime I have like a happy feeling or excitement or any of those more like quote unquote positive or pleasant feelings, that's a signal letting me know that I have some met needs. And anytime I have a feeling like anger or disappointment or stress or overwhelm or frustration, whatever we consider like quote unquote negative feelings or unpleasant feelings, that's a signal that I have some unmet needs. So self-empathy is about turning our attention to what's happening internally on this, basically turning our attention to our hearts. Right? What am I feeling? What am I needing, or what needs are met? This is an important skill to have, because if I don't know how to pay attention to my own heart, to my own feelings and needs, and say my partner, for example, does something that I really don't like, that really bothers me or upsets me or hurts me or pisses me off, what I'm likely to do is say something like, you're an a-hole, you're a jerk, you suck, you. If I don't know how to turn my attention inward, what most likely is going to come out of my mouth is some sort of blame, judgment, criticism, right? This is what we call quote unquote violent communication, when we're like making an enemy of the other, blaming the other. For a lot of us, that's all we know how to do. So for many people, until they encounter nonviolent communication, they just think that's just what you do, because that's what you see modeled everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Skill of self-empathy, when we cultivate that, it's like, oh, okay, I'm having blame, judgment, and criticism because I have some unmet needs. Can I connect with my own feelings and my own needs and express those? Because that's going to make it so much easier for my partner or whomever to actually hear me. Why? Because when they hear my blame, judgment, and criticism, they're just going to get defensive. They're just going to want to protect themselves. They're not going to be open to listening. So I can make it easier for my partner or whomever to listen and hear me if I can first own my feelings and needs. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I'm going to be completely honest. So what I'm thinking is, yes, it makes sense. But I have to tell you, I'm going to be honest. My husband and I have been married, I don't know, I'm terrible with time, 25, 27 years. You know, my husband and I literally last weekend kind of got in. We don't fight, but we definitely got into kind of heated argument. You know, I was kind of elevated. He was elevated. We weren't listening. We really weren't communicating well. Like, he was in his trauma, if you like. I was in my trauma, and we just weren't doing it. So I hear that everything you just said, it sounds wonderful, but how, you know, I mean, how do you really transfer that into everyday life with, you know, real people and real couples and real kids and real friends, right? How do you just, what I call kind of stay on the pinhead, right? How do you stay kind of grounded and in your own energy when, and communicate in that way through kind of highly charged, difficult, emotional kind of conversations? How does that take a superpower, right? Is that like, do you have to be like super grounded, super mindful, or can anybody learn to do that?
This is such a great question. I love how you're framing it so transparently, like in the context of your long-term relationship, where I'm assuming there's a lot of love and a lot of awareness and a lot of care and a lot of skill, right? And still there's those moments where it's like you said, our trauma is activated and we find ourselves lashing out as if we never learned anything about anything communication.
That's right.
Really normalize that and say, me too. And the goal, as I see it, is not to stay on the pinpoint, but to expand our capacity for returning to our awareness of what's happening inside us, right? So we are not going for perfection here. If we were, we would just all feel like failures, myself included. Like, I have to give up on perfection. I'm human. I'm traumatized. I have not healed all my trauma. I am convinced I never will, right? I'm going to get activated. And so just to say this is not about being like some saint, and even the saints, I'm sure, because of their trauma, weren't saints, right? Like no one is. So we have to let go of that ideal image of ourselves that like, oh, once we learn nonviolent communication, we're always going to be peaceful. No.
Got it. Got it. I'm really happy to hear you. Really happy to hear you say that. So maybe just say that again. Like once we learn these skills, nonviolent communication, it's still going to be messy. Is that what you're saying?
Still going to be messy.
Okay.
As they say, it's still going to be messy. Because this isn't going to make us not human. But what it does, honestly, like I can say this from experience.
Yeah.
Expands our capacity to notice when we're triggered. It expands our options for what to do when we're triggered. It helps us stop fighting. It literally helps us stop fighting because we can catch it quicker. Oh, we are disconnected, or we are headed towards the land of disconnection. Let's take a break from this conversation so we don't say anything that's going to damage us, right? So one of the big skills I teach couples is when and how to take a break with care and in a connecting way.
So what would that look like? Give me some examples.
Like when should it, the timing is so key. Like, are we available to have a connected, caring conversation right now? And the way to know that is to ask this one question. Are either of us willing and able to listen?
The listening, the magic of listening.
The magic of listening. If no one's able or willing to listen, do not say another word.
Wow.
Because there is no point. Because the point of speaking is to be heard. And if no one is online to listen, no one's going to get heard. And that in itself will totally change the game. Huge.
So say that again. I just really want listeners to be able to hear that. So just say that again. Say that again.
Are either of us willing and able to listen right now? If not, do not say another word.
Then that's the timeout. That's time to take the timeout. And we're talking about couples, but I imagine this goes across the board. It could be kids, adult children, in-laws, parents, right? I mean, kind of across the board. Yeah.
Anyone. My particular angle on NVC is I like to help people who care and love care about and love each other, bring these skills and tools into their relationship. So, couples, family members, friends, right? Close colleagues, anyone where there's like, we care about each other and we want to treat each other well. And of course, NVC can also be used with strangers and really anybody, but it's different when it's like somebody you care about and somebody who cares about you. It's a different way of applying it.
It's a different way, and it's a different conversation too, because when you're in conversation with a loved one, right? Again, somebody that you really care about, then the stakes are a little bit higher, right? Our needs are a little bit higher. You mentioned, what do we need? What do we want here, right? Those are a little more activated than they would be with the Starbucks barista or the oil change person, right? I mean, we got a little more skin in the game, I would imagine.
Right. We're more invested.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned nonviolent communication, and you have a great podcast, and I'm going to encourage listeners to jump on and have a listen, because you really do a lovely 3-part kind of overview. And I love the term heart-centered. I know the technical term is nonviolent communication, but I love the term heart-centered communication. That really resonated with me. So tell me a little bit more about the tools or the techniques and how that works.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that the term heart-centered resonates for you. That's what I like to call it. I like to call it nonviolent communication also to give respect to the founder, Marshall Rosenberg, and also because it's really rooted in like this kind of political philosophy of nonviolence that was inspired by Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. So I really like to like give a deep bow to all of them. But it turns off a lot of people because a lot of people don't think of themselves as violent, and they're like, oh, this is for people who are hitting each other, where there's like, you know, physical abuse in the relationship. And it has such a broader reach than that. So some people call it compassionate communication, which I also like. But as I've been teaching it and writing about it and talking about it, for me, what feels truest is, oh, it's heart-centered communication. Because the kind of communication that divides us is when we're really in our heads, like centering our thoughts. My thoughts about myself, my thoughts about you, how good I am, how bad I am, how good you are, how bad you are, how right I am, how wrong you are, right? Like those are thoughts. And nonviolent communication invites us more into our heart, where our feelings and our needs are. We're centering our feelings and needs. We're centering our hearts. That's what we're focused, literally centering, like literally focusing our attention there.
Got it. Yeah. So I'm going to let's pause there for a minute. So let's walk listeners through like actually how to do that. Like how, because a lot of people don't understand, don't get how to actually kind of, I call it switch gears, right? Switch out of the kind of cognitive frontal cortex into the body, into the heart center.
Yeah.
So let's take a moment and just coach people through how literally to do that.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable doing that? Are you okay with doing that? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So it can seem kind of vague or abstract, right? Like the heart, like how do you access that, right? Especially when so much of our conditioning and our training is to focus on our thoughts, but we don't even realize we're focusing on our thoughts until we encounter mindfulness or meditation. And then we realize, oh, we're focusing all our attention on our thoughts, right? So one thing I love about nonviolent communication is that it has these like beautiful ideals and values and principles, but it's also super practical, like very like pragmatic, like how to access the heart. And so there's these lists of feelings and needs that if you take any nonviolent communication course, you're going to get them. I give them to people for free. People can access them at my website, which I guess you'll probably link to. But they're lists of feelings and needs. And what I recommend people do when they're trying to improve their communication is to start by really expanding their vocabulary of feelings and needs. Like there's like hundreds of words of feelings and maybe like 50 needs or something. And it's like we're cultivating our emotional intelligence anytime we look at these lists. So I often tell people, like, look at the list. What do you feel? Because if you don't look at the list and you're trying to identify your feelings, you often end up actually saying a thought.
Yeah.
Like if it, you'll, and in our English language, I don't know if it's like this in other languages, but in the English language, we'll say things like, what do I feel? I feel like it's just not fair when he da 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 da. Right? Or I feel like I'm just inadequate. Right? We give a thought, but we say, I feel like, or I feel that, or what do I feel? I feel you're really rude.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It gets confusing because we use that colloquially, like I feel that, or I feel like, or I feel you, or I feel those aren't feelings. And so we look at this list and it's like feelings like happy, sad, angry, and then like nuances of all those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Disappointed, frustrated, exasperated, exhausted, irritated, irked. Like there's all these really funny, like cute almost words that it's like, oh, I never even thought about that word as a feeling. And so the more we can familiarize ourselves with these words, both feelings and needs, the easier it is to find our way to our heart. So it's very practical.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds wonderful. And I definitely will link to that in the show notes, but I would encourage everybody to go download that list of feelings and needs. Yes. And start to connect with it, start to kind of go inside and start to learn a little bit more about your kind of internal culture. Yeah. Yeah.
And what amazes me, Kate, is like, people often think like, oh, this is for kids. Like we teach kids about feelings, right? And so there can be this kind of like minimizing of it as like an important skill, or like, oh, I'm beyond that, or I know all this. But time and time again, even like the therapists who I work with are like, whoa, like this is a whole other level of emotional intelligence. Like I didn't realize that I wasn't talking about feelings when I thought I was talking about feelings. Or I didn't realize there were all these feelings, or, oh, I never knew that my feelings are linked to my needs and what these needs are. And so I encourage your listeners to try to keep an open mind, that if you're like, oh, I'm beyond this, I don't need this, right? I've done so much spiritual work, or I've done so much therapy, done so much personal growth work. Like those are my clients, very advanced, very intelligent, personal growth junkies, so to speak. And they still are like amazed by how helpful these lists are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what resonated for me, again, I listened to that, a couple of those episodes, was, I think, did you hear that? I feel like, pretty grounded, pretty confident in the whole kind of, feelings. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I feel pretty heart-centered, right? I kind of have cultivated this kind of heart-centered space, heart-centered living. But what fascinated me was like there's like 50 needs, and I'm like, whoa, 50 needs. So that was an area for me that really caught my attention. So what are some of the needs that might get triggered in these in difficult, messy interactions with the people that we love? What are some of basic fundamental needs that maybe we're not conscious of?
Yeah. And so we call these universal human needs. So the idea is that all humans have them. So it's needs like connection, autonomy, meaning, purpose, play, like physical well-being. And then like on the list, there are those are like the main categories. Then there's like subcategories for each of those. So like belonging, affection, space, choice, a sense of like power in my world, shared reality, resonance, fun, sexual expression, like spiritual communion, and it's not like we all have these needs all the time. But what I found is that everyone I've interacted with around this can relate to all of those needs. Either they have them now, or they've had them at some point, or they can imagine having them at some point in the future.
Yeah. Wow. So you're going through that list, and again, there's some things on there. It's like, with a lot of curiosity about that. So again, we'll definitely link into the show notes. So we've talked a little bit about kind of heart-centered communication, the problem with shaming and blaming, finger pointing, the you, right? We've talked about ways to kind of try and stay grounded. We've talked about some strategies for kind of taking that time out, right? When we're not being heard or we're not listening, right? That is a beautiful, beautiful tip and strategy. I love that. What else might you suggest for listeners if they're just wanting to dip their toe in this world?
So there's like principles of NVC, and then there's the like skills. And so the principle that I think is probably the most game-changing concept we haven't talked about yet. So I do want to talk about that. And it's this idea that everything anyone ever says or does is motivated by an attempt to meet needs.
Oh. All right. So let's repeat that. Let's just take a pause. Let's take a breath. Because that ties into what we've just been talking about. Say that again.
That everything anybody ever says or does is an attempt to meet needs.
Wow. Anything they say or do, that's a pretty global statement, is an attempt to meet needs.
I find it really exciting to hold that as like, is this possible? And to check it out in your own life and to see like, does this seem true to me? Right. I mean, as with any philosophy, it's like, you got to see if it resonates for you. It's not like the ultimate truth. When I check it out, I'm like, oh yeah, like that seems really true. And it helps me have more compassion for all the humans, including myself.
Yeah.
Like when I stay up, I'm like a sleep deprived parent. And it's like, what I should do is sleep whenever I can. What I end up doing sometimes when my kid goes to sleep is binging on This Is Us, my current favorite show on Netflix, because I can't get enough of it. And it's like, okay, I could beat myself up for that. Like, oh, like you're exhausted. Like you need to be able to take care of everyone and be productive and do your work. Like, why are you being so indulgent or, whatever the self-judgment is?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, everything is an attempt to meet needs. Sure, I could beat myself up for watching the show, or I can say, what needs am I attempting to meet by spending 3 hours watching my favorite show, knowing full well that I'm going to be more tired in the morning?
Mm-hmm. So much softer, so much kinder, so much more self-compassion.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm reflecting on the little squabble between my husband and I because it's so fresh in my mind. And I'm thinking about, okay, what were my needs? Because I can only really talk for myself, I guess. But maybe I can think about him too. Maybe I should think about him. I don't know.
I mean, I can speak to that if you want. Or
yeah. Let's speak to that because that's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I teach couples a process. And I do this actually every week in my Facebook group, where I walk people through this. And we can link to that too if you want. It's NVC for Couples Facebook group. But it's a process of, I call it my 2 hearts exercise, where anytime there's a conflict with anyone, I'm just going to say partner because that's where my specialty is. But anytime there's a conflict or anytime your partner does something you don't like, the first step is to tune into your own feelings. Right? You didn't like it. It brings up unpleasant feelings. What are those feelings? And you have those feelings because you have some unmet needs. What are the unmet needs? And then, so that's self-empathy. And then to see if you have any curiosity about what might have been going on for your partner when they did that thing you didn't like.
Oh.
What might they, this other human being, it's so hard to remember when we're pissed at our partners that they're actually a human being. So I say that explicitly. What are they, this other human being, maybe feeling when they do that thing that pissed you off or hurt you? What needs might they have been attempting to meet when they did that thing that you really didn't like? So it's those 4 questions, those 4 steps. What am I feeling? What needs of mine aren't met? What might my partner have been feeling? And what needs might they have been attempting to meet? And I walk people through that in my mini course, the 4 steps to stop any fight. So those 4 questions are really like, before you talk to your partner about the issue, I encourage both partners to ask themselves those 4 questions, because that's going to change what you center in the conversation. Instead of centering your judgments about each other or like why you're right and your partner's wrong, you're going to center your feelings and needs and be more open and curious about their feelings and needs.
Yeah. So you do that in that kind of what I'm calling that timeout period, right?
Yes.
Self-reflection. You both do this kind of self-reflection, maybe jot it down in a journal or a piece of paper, right? You do the self-reflection and then you figure out what this is about for you, right? Again, the feelings and the needs. And then you kind of come back, reconnect together and start some I statements, right? Oh, I realized I was this, or I realized this, or I realized whatever. Is that kind of the flow?
You got it. Yeah. And in my mini course, I have a workbook where I have 2 hearts, like literally just a heart. So you don't even need the workbook, but it's there. You could just take a piece of paper and draw 2 hearts. But in one heart, it's your own feelings and needs. And in the other heart, it's your guesses about your partner's feelings and needs. And you can literally come back to the conversation with your two hearts and then just talk about what's in the hearts.
Wow. That's beautiful.
So it's literally centering the hearts. You know what I mean? Like a visual representation of that.
Yeah.
And then all the thoughts are like around the heart. You don't need to talk about the thoughts, but you might need to get them out on your own just to be able to access your heart. Sometimes we just need to get all our judgments out, but don't say them to your partner, right? Just write them in your own journal. Your partner does not need to hear your thoughts and judgments about them. It's not going to serve, right? But you're allowed to have them. Just don't center them in the conversation.
Yeah. Don't make them the main course, right? I think we make our judgments and criticisms the main course, but you're saying don't make the main course, get them off the menu.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Right? And let's focus on the heart, right? The heart needs to be the main course, right? These feelings and needs, your feelings and needs and your best guess for your loved one.
Yeah, if you want to connect.
Okay.
Right? I say that because it's not like I don't want anyone to hear like, oh, it's better to talk about my feelings and needs than my thoughts. Like it depends on the sense, and it depends on your intention. So if your intention is to connect, don't share those judgments.
Got it. And if you're what's the other side of that coin? So if your intention is not for connection, then it's just what is the other side of the coin?
Like if you're in a debate and your intention is to like win an argument, share your thoughts.
Okay.
But most of the time with your partner, when you're in conflict, you're not in a debate. You're in a relationship where you're trying to get back to loving connection.
Yeah. 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 So it's discerning. There's some discernment there, right? So I'm thinking about, the debating. So it could be if you're planning a trip or if you're, I don't know, something. I mean, there's a different time. I
think any time with your partner, if you want to be heard and you want your partner to be heard, then leave the judgments and blame out. I mean, you could say like always leave the judgments, blames out. I'm just trying to I'm just trying to shine a light on like, there's a reason we do this. It's not because it's good or right. It's because we're trying to
connect. So the purpose is this connection, right? Yeah. Keeping the connection as opposed to this disconnection and this conflict.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking of like, if you're like divorcing and you've both decided you don't want to be in the relationship, but and you're like going to court, like you're probably going to want to make some points about how bad your partner is because you're trying to win a court case. But like, my point is like most of the time, that's not what you're up to. Most of the time, what you want is connection.
Okay. And I'm guessing, I'm thinking, and if that isn't right, what you really want, then you have to really evaluate the relationship, I would imagine, right? If you find yourself not really wanting that truthfully, right, then you have to really think about, what's that about for me, right? What's that about?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Like if you did not want connection with this other person, it's not like you should, but just to know, like, is that what I want?
Yeah. Yeah. So great way to self-reflect again.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. I need to take a breath. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm just feeling into it. It's like, sometimes you may like generally want to connect with your partner, but in that moment, what matters more to you than connection is being heard or like self-expression, right? Or like making some point. And that's okay. It's really just about being aware of like, what is most important to me here so that I can be intentional about how I'm showing up in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, conscious,
aware, self-aware. Self-awareness is so key.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just what's coming up for me. I just want to say externally, right, with our external relationships and our internal relationships, with our internal systems, that self-awareness about, what are the needs here? Yeah. Very, 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 very powerful. Very powerful. Yeah. So Ali, is there anything else you want to kind of add or share? I mean, you've given so many tips and strategies and so much advice. Anything else on your mind that you want to share today?
I mean, I would be remiss to not share like the whole 4-step model of NVC. I kind of center the feelings and needs because to me, that's like kind of the heart of it. But there's also observation. So Marshall Rosenberg's 4-step model in NVC is observation, feeling, need, request. Each of those is like so rich, and there's so much to say about each of those components. I don't know that we have time to get into all of it. Maybe we can have a part 2 where we do, but I did just want to name that.
Yeah. So just give us the highlight. I mean, I probably put you on the spot a little, but just give us a little bit about the 4 steps and then listeners, I'm definitely going to direct listeners to your podcast and website and all that good stuff. So give us a bit of the 4 steps.
Sure. So the way I like to teach it is like, okay, so let's just make it really real. Your partner does something you don't like, right? So say that happens. So the 4 steps would be identifying like, what exactly did your partner do or say that you didn't like? Our temptation is to be like, he's a slob. She's selfish. She was inconsiderate. They never help around the house. Our temptation is to say some interpretation or judgment. And so the first step of observation is like, okay, let's actually discern what happened, like that a video camera would capture. Like, what is it that happened separate from your interpretation of it, right? My partner, I see socks that belong to my partner in the kitchen, on the kitchen floor, right? So it's the first step is getting real clear on what actually happened. What are you observing? And then what do I feel in relation to that? And then what needs of mine aren't met? And then the request, what would I like to see happen, right? So it's like, when I see your socks on the kitchen floor, I feel disgust. I feel exasperated. I feel annoyed and frustrated because I'm really needing support in keeping our home tidy enough that I feel like it's a sanctuary, that I have some peace of mind, right? That my nervous system isn't activated by the mess. I want support in helping my nervous system be calm in our home. Request, would you be willing to, when you take your socks off, to put them in the hamper? Right? So the request is like a real tangible, doable, concrete, not like, would you be willing to be more mindful? Would you be willing to be more considerate? Like those are not doable. So we want it to be really doable. And then we want to be open to hearing no.
Yeah. That's what I'm going. And they say, no, screw you. I don't, whatever. It's your problem, not mine, kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. That's where it gets really meaty and like exciting for me as somebody who loves conflict because I know how to navigate it. It's like, oh, okay. And get this. You're saying no because it wouldn't meet some needs for you to do that thing I'm asking you to do. So I'm really curious, what needs of yours wouldn't be met by putting your socks in the hamper? Tell me more.
My gosh. Can you even imagine, listeners, what that would be like? I'm thinking about my life and oh my gosh. Wow.
Right? It's a totally different game.
Totally different.
And sometimes we first have to self-empathize before we can get curious. Like, oh, ouch, I'm so disappointed. I really just want your support. I want your hell yes to my request. Like, ouch, I'm interpreting that as maybe you don't care about me, right? So connecting with my own pain, hearing the no, And then seeing, okay, remembering this principle, all actions are attempts to meet needs. So that includes saying no. What needs are they attempting to meet when they say no? What are they saying yes to when they say no to my request?
Yeah.
And then you kind of excavate their needs, and you know your needs, and then you can work together. Oh, these are your needs. Oh, these are my needs. Wow, I care about my needs getting met. And it turns out I care about your needs getting met. And you now, through this conversation and this connection, not only care about your needs getting met, but also mine. What strategies could we come up with together that would address both of our needs so that neither one of us feels like we're losing?
Yeah.
We both feel valued.
Yeah, that's
Go
right.
ahead.
Yeah. So I want to flesh this out a little bit. So I get the need, the sock woman. I totally relate to the sock woman because I tend to have a nervous system that needs a little more, less clutter and more order, right? So I totally get the sock woman, that need for that serenity and to feel comfortable in your space. Get that. So I'm thinking about, why the heck would somebody say no to picking up socks, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so what? And I've never considered, okay, what might that be about for them? And I'm thinking about these needs. I'm thinking, well, maybe there's a power thing here. Maybe there's a control thing here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he's more comfortable in mess and clutter, and that's more comfortable for his nervous system.
Interesting.
Wow.
It could be. Maybe it's more familiar. Maybe I love all your guesses. And this is all we do. We're just imagining, right? We're never like, I know exactly what's going on for this other person. But we're just imagining, what could it be? What beautiful needs might a human be attempting to meet when they say, no, I'm going to keep putting my socks wherever I damn well please. It could be a need for freedom. It could be like, they have a job where they're like told what to do all the time, or they, if it's a kid, like they're told what to do all the time. And they're like, I need some freaking freedom. Like, what's the big deal? I want to just I don't want to get up and walk all the way to the hamper. I just want to feel like I can do whatever I want somewhere on this planet. And it's my home. I want to be comfortable here.
That makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah. If you can get some insight into their why, that makes you can say, oh, okay. Yeah, buddy, I hear you.
Right. I hear you and I care I want that for you because I love you. I can identify with that need for freedom. I have it too. I want that to be met for all humans. So now I'm invested. Now I care not just about my need getting met, but yours too.
Yeah.
And when there's that mutual investment in both of our needs getting met, creative solutions arise.
Sure. Well, the whole energy shifts, right? It goes from the shaming and blaming and I'm right and you're wrong, right? To collaboration, right? Collaboration.
Yes.
Absolutely. The whole energy shifts. And I can almost feel it in my body, right? I can almost feel the shift from this kind of frontal cortex to this heart, again, back to that heart space that like, okay, I'm really feeling a lot of empathy. I'm getting it. I'm understanding. I'm resonating. And those are all kind of those heart-centered energies. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, Ali, I have learned a lot today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're
so welcome. I have too. One reason I love talking about MVC is because every time I have a conversation with someone who's interested in it, it's like I learn more. I feel my passion every time. It's like, I just think this is so great and so powerful and so much what the world needs.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Any chance I have to talk about it, I just feel so excited and like, it's very alive for me. So thank you for this conversation.
Yeah. So my final question I ask everybody, my guess is one piece of sage advice from your life about really living intentionally. What would that be?
Before you do anything, if you can access your awareness, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What needs am I attempting to meet by doing this? So whether it's applying for a job or saying yes to being a guest on a podcast or emptying the dishwasher or calling up your partner, to ask them for something, whatever. Before you do it, ask yourself, what needs am I attempting to meet? So that way you're living more intentionally connected to your needs.
I love that. I love that. That's powerful. Yeah. Yeah. And this is what this show is all about, is really helping people live intentionally, right? So they can have, rich, strong, healthy lives. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. So how can people connect with you? How can, share all the good stuff, and we'll make sure we get links in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. There's lots of ways. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Allie Miller Coaching. And I mentioned a few things in our conversation. So there's free feelings and needs list. If you go to my website, alliemillercoaching.com/feelings and needs. And then I also mentioned my free mini course, the 4 steps to stop any fight without giving in. And it comes with that workbook with the heart documents. So that's at alliemillercoaching.com/free mini course. And I'm offering currently a free 30-minute consult call with me. So if this interests you and you're like, I wonder how this could help my relationship, we can talk through that together. And that's, to book that, you go to calendly.com/alliemillercoaching/30.
Got it. Wow. There's some great resources. And I have to say, I'm going to be downloading that needs and feelings list. Right. I'm definitely going to be downloading that. It sounds like a really powerful tool. I will make sure everything is in the show notes so people can connect with you and reach out for all that good stuff.
Great.
And again, I just thank you so much for this really helpful, powerful conversation today. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Kate. I loved meeting you and chatting with you.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your time. I love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Remember to grab your free hiking guide, and please take a quick moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much. Take care. Until next time. Hey, me again. Just a reminder, this podcast should not be considered professional advice. It's also not a substitute for mental, physical, or any other healthcare-related treatment. For any questions about your condition and/or concerns, please contact a fully licensed healthcare professional. Thank you.